Welcome back to the Energetics Podcast. I am your host, Kara Bunde-Dunn, and today we're diving into a fascinating conversation at the intersection of physics, consciousness, and spirituality. Dr. Michael Pravica, a professor of physics at UNLV, go Rebels for all you Rebels fans out there, is joining us. So, if you have ever wondered how science and spirituality might be speaking the same language, but just in different terms, this episode is for you. We'll discuss what hyperdimensionality really is, how it could explain aspects of consciousness, and whether our ability to connect with God or spirit or source, whatever you might call it, might be linked to the unseen dimensions. So get ready for a mind expanding conversation and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me, Kara.
Yeah, I'm really excited to get into this. Okay. So I use some big words for all of my listeners who might already be like, oh, Kara, I don't know if this is the episode for me. And I'm going to tell them, you hang in there with us and you just open your heart and mind to being expanded. Does that sound fair?
That sounds totally fair. I always tell my students we're doing physics every moment of our existence. So we have that connection. I'm just trying to make them aware of it.
Love it.
There's nothing different.
That's right. You're going to teach us this. So, what is hyperdimensionality in just
Yeah.
regular terms for maybe not your PhD level physics students, but like the mom driving her kid to drop off for elementary school? Like, how would you explain hyperdimensionality in simple terms?
Sure. So dimensions we have in this universe, we have 3 dimensions of space, X, Y, and Z, and 1 dimension of time, as Einstein's relativity stated. And 0 dimensions would be like a point. And, if you take a pen and you put a dot on the paper, that's, a 1 dimension is a line. So that's like X, the X line. 2 dimensions would be X and Y. That would be like a piece of paper. And then 3 dimensions would be like a cube. And then if you saw Interstellar, for example, then you were dealing with something called hypercubes or tesseracts. So those are cubes inside of a cube. And so that goes on and on and on and on. And so hyper, just anything that's greater than, sort of hyperdimensionality, is basically that we live in a universe of these, we believe, fixed dimensions, but in fact that there are likely other dimensions that exist that are beyond our conventional 3+1 dimensions of space and time, and that we just can't see, but that doesn't mean that they're not there.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to describe it. So, as a spiritual medium, I explain that I like tap in. So I call myself a spiritual medium because I really tap into source, God, energy, angels. Angels come to me all the time. I channel their messages from them a lot. And I will say we're tapping into the 5D. So like we're living in the 3D, we're tapping into the 5D, we're tapping into a dimension beyond our understanding.
Correct.
And in that dimension, we can be in the energy of it, maybe not all the time because we're a 3D human bot having a human experience.
Correct.
But we can tap into that dimension. So how do you explain that from a physics perspective?
Yeah. So first off, this is not a unique idea as far as hyperdimensions, because in string theory, there are, I forget now, I think it was something up to 11 dimensions, 11 or 13. I always forget. It changes depending on the theory. But, for example, we have many things in this universe that just because you can't see them, you can't, we have 5 senses and the lucky ones maybe 6. But the point is, there are something like thousands of neutrinos that pass through you every second, but they don't interact. So just because they don't interact and you don't feel them doesn't mean that they're not there.
Right.
So the idea of hyperdimensionality is that first off, we are connected in a quantum mechanical way, just like all particles are connected. And there's something called, that Einstein did not like, spooky action at a distance, that you could take 2 particles that are coupled and separate them light years apart. And if you study one of those particles, automatically what we call the wave function, or this property of this particle, suddenly is known to exactly what the other particle is doing. And that was something that would be instantaneous or very fast. And so the way to get out of that is to recognize that if we have a higher dimension that these particles are connected, then that takes care of all the problems of this spooky action at a distance. And, if you believe in the scriptures, or what Jesus did when he was resurrected, they said he was passing through walls, and they didn't believe him until they touched him, doubting Thomas and stuff. And so the
Yeah.
point I'm trying to make is that if you believe in those miracles, then it's very easy to explain them with hyperdimensionality. Because if you think of a piece of paper and you have 2 points that are at the ends of the paper, if you curve that paper towards those 2 points, you can jump the gap, so to speak.
Right.
Instead of going through the paper, you go jump the gap between the paper, and now you've suddenly cut all that distance into something very small. So basically, this idea of that there's something much more that exists beyond our 3+1 dimensions is, like I said, nothing really that new. It's just that I believe that if you think of our creator, God, however you want to put it, as something like a painter, like Galileo painting a painting, we're inside that painting, the
Yeah.
3-dimensional
That's
plus
right.
one painting.
Yeah.
And so to create something, you literally have to go outside of the painting to make it. So that's what I call creating something outside of the box. And the whole beauty of humanity is that we have this gift to literally think of a problem outside of the box, so literally the 3+1 dimensional box, and then solve it. And so the hyperdimensionality is just a means for us to connect with solutions that exist outside of the box and then bring them into the box to solve the problem. Nikola Tesla, one of the world's greatest minds, said he believed that we are receivers and transmitters of knowledge.
Yeah.
And he explained some sort of a medium out there of solutions. I like to call it in quantum mechanics the Hilbert space of solutions. And so we have this ability to connect between this solution space, this hyperdimensional solution space, and solve whatever, address whatever concern, whatever problem that we have to solve. And so that ability to create has to be hyperdimensional. We also have I'm sorry, I'm going on.
Yeah,
here.
no, you're great.
Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, we also have mathematics that transcends space-time. It's very easy to explain hyperdimensionality. You can talk, like I said, you have a point, that's zero distance. Then you have a line, that's like x1 minus x2, that's the length.
Yep.
Then you can still have a length in a paper, but it's like the hypotenuse, x squared, x minus 1, delta x squared plus delta y squared, making a hypotenuse. And you go on and on and on.
You're bringing me back to the days here
of geometry,
Professor. I'm like, oh Lord.
I don't want to get too technical, but I mean, I'm just simply saying that you can define distance in
math
hyperdimensions very straightforwardly. So we have concepts of infinity. There's not only just one infinity, there's infinity 0, infinity Aleph naught, Aleph 1, Aleph 2. So you have this infinity of infinities, and the fact that we can imagine this, the fact that we have this is a gift.
Yeah. I do feel like that, like even just where we've evolved in terms of science and our human existence and what we know now versus like what a pioneer Einstein or Newton were or Tesla were like back, how pioneering they were and how much of what they were researching was so fringe. Right. Yeah. And now it's no. Yeah. Gravity is a real thing. Yeah. Of course. Let's define it,
Right.
And I truly think like understanding. So I call it the quantum field where all space, time and dimension, is beyond our understanding. It's everything everywhere all at once. If you're a Hollywood movie person. Right. And so I like to call it the quantum field. I don't know how you feel about that term, but I view it as like where all things are possible, if that makes sense.
So I've made a case in some of my writings that if you think of our creator, God, outside of this universe, he is a different form of energy than we are. And if you read the Nicene Creed in Orthodox Christianity, there is a comment there that God comes from something else. It's not the same thing that we are. And that's how you could have the blue fire, when I believe God, visited Moses, and he was a fire. He was this, and that fire is not this. It didn't burn. There was a bush. There was a burning bush, but the
Right.
bush didn't burn. So that's a different energy. It's not the same energy that we are. And I've made the case that our energy in this 3+1 dimensional universe is an energy that's always converting. Ever since the Big Bang, you've had this
Right.
explosion. You've had a conversion of energy from high kinetic, velocity to, slowing down. And that you could actually use to define time. Time, physicists like to think of chaos and disorder. I like to think of it just as conversion of energy. We are literally
Yeah.
stardust. We've been a form, we're just a different form of energy than
Yeah.
what began 13.5 billion years ago. God's energy is perfect. It doesn't convert. It's there. It's I
So
am
do
that I
you,
am.
yeah,
It's
I actually say that a lot at the end of
okay.
every single one of my meditations. But for me, I am that I am. It reminds me, and I would be curious what you think of this. I've read some of your articles that I think I may know the answer, but I'd like to see what you say.
Sure.
I call it like a little God spark. That there's a little God spark within
Yes.
all of us. You may call it
Oh
the Holy
yes.
Spirit, but I
Yes.
do actually believe that as humans, we're getting a tiny little glimpse of what
Yes.
that unconditional love source energy
Yes.
is. And
Yes.
I like to refer to it as a little God spark or my higher self, but you may call it the Holy Spirit. But I view it as similar, different
No.
names
Yeah.
for the same way of describing energy.
Right. So let me just explain that. I looked at it as like we're like little fireflies. We have our own little, we have a soul,
Yeah.
and that soul is perfect. That is not, it gets corrupted and contaminated, but it's perfect. Now, I don't know what the soul is per se. I kind of believe, like you said, it's a spark, it's a little bit of that energy, like fireflies dancing around some giant campfire and not getting burned, but just loving that light, that energy.
Yeah.
I can't. Is it the light itself, or is it a receptacle for the light? I'm not sure. Okay, I like to believe yes, we have something that's in us that's infinite. I mean, that is it's how do I word it? It's just it's there forever. Our bodies are that part of that converting energy that will
Right.
die,
That's exactly
but
right.
that part of our soul lasts forever. Okay, and
Yes.
so that's how we couple with God. God doesn't couple because he made it's like a artist with this painting. I mean, it's not it's the painting's different. It's inanimate materials. It's paint. It's a
Yeah.
canvas. But he put something in that canvas that is part of him. And that part of him is what connects. That's the
Yeah.
love. That's the
Yeah.
eternal love and the warmth. And so that's what we forget about. We miss, we get focused on the painting, the 3+1 dimensional universe we live in, and we forget that there's something that we're getting that's outside of
Yes.
the universe.
Yeah.
And again, I'm Christian, so I believe in Jesus. Jesus to me is the projection of God.
Yeah. I
This
agree.
I
It's
call
like,
him an infinite dimensional being
yeah,
into our 3+1 dimensional universe. So, and that's a complicated concept.
it
If
is.
you take a sphere and you cut slices through that sphere, as the sphere is passing through a piece of paper, you'll see circle like a dot,
Right.
and then circles, and the
Right.
circle increases, and then starts decreasing until a point, and then it leaves the plane. That's what a projection means. The
Yeah.
projection of a
That's
sphere
a
in a
good way to
plane.
describe it. Like we are the point, and then we're
Yeah,
coming in, expanding, and then
yeah,
contracting back in to then
yeah,
being the point again.
correct. So we have
Yeah.
something that is hyperdimensional. I don't know how many dimensions. I just use a logical
Yeah,
argument
I,
to
I
say,
like
look,
hyper. I'm going to say that
yeah,
because I don't always think like the way that what I have learned and from downloads and guidance and studying, like they're like fourth dimension, like your dream state, your fifth
yeah,
dimension's like the angelic realm, but it goes on, and they only
yeah,
show me as much as my like human self can understand at one time. But I keep
correct.
getting more and more information and downloads as I learn more. But
Yeah.
okay, so I
Well,
have a question for you.
yeah.
Okay, I did at a conference, at a business conference. We did something called spoon bending. I don't know if you've ever heard of this.
No.
Okay, so we're going to talk about this because I want to
Okay.
understand how I'm able to do this. So I'm going to show you. I've done this twice. This is my first spoon. And so what happens is you just go into a deep meditative state. And
Hmm.
what you're supposed to do is pull gratitude and love all the love within you, all the things you're grateful for, all that you can imagine, that you, even the challenges and the lessons learned in all of your challenges, and you're channeling the energy of that into a fixed metal spoon. So I've done
Interesting.
this twice, and I can feel the spoon getting hot, and I can bend and manipulate the spoon.
Hmm.
And I would love to know how we can do that, like how we can channel energy that we cannot see to
Hmm.
even do something like physically change an object. So if you're
Okay.
watching on YouTube, this might be the clip I use as my little teaser, but like, how am I able to do this without force?
Hmm. Okay. Well,
What do you think of that?
yeah. Okay. So, there, well, I
You're like,
mean,
oh, Kara, I thought I was just going to come and talk about a couple lectures. Now you got me talking about bending spoons.
well, I would say that, there is something called ESP. And I've actually just written a paper called Waves and Human Behavior.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping it'll be accepted. And if it does, I'm going to kind of go and start, my field of research kind of going along these lines. Um, Basically, the argument is just that we're actually all waves by the wave particle duality.
Right.
And so there is something called evanescent waves. And evanescent waves are waves that can go penetrate, leave a medium and maybe go into another medium and stuff like that. And you see evanescent waves all the time in forbidden reflections and, like light and stuff. So, and it's well known that there are brain waves,
Yes.
alpha, beta,
Yep.
delta, gamma
Exactly.
waves.
Yep.
And you can detect those waves. You can put a sensor on the outside of your head or some
Right.
distance, slight distance away. And so, and then you can detect that those waves are there.
Yeah.
So, is there some, again, and I haven't seen this bending of the spoon, but are there ways that you can concentrate energy and
Yes.
and possibly do something that you can observe? I mean, I can't say no. I mean, I'm going to say I'm a little skeptical just because but are there ways, for example, that you have, like, if somebody has cards and they're asking you, what card am I holding? And they're holding it behind you.
Yeah. How do you
I
explain
actually
that?
believe that you have a little bit of that knowledge if if you're focused.
Yeah.
And there was I think there was a doctor that wrote something like about being in heaven, Proof of Heaven. He wrote a
Yeah.
book. Ibn Alexander, I think is his name. And I read the book, and he made a comment in the book about that, like you have this almost instantaneous way to calculate things, which I call your instinct. And I love the way he worded it because I've kind of done some training for myself.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've tried when there's like a quiz or something I look online, what I do is I answer whatever pops first into my head.
Yeah.
I
Right.
don't mess it up. I don't
That's right.
contaminate it with reason and
Yeah.
logic. And you know what? 8 times out of 10, I'm right.
Isn't that
So
crazy?
yeah, so I mean, I think there is something that we can couple, and this is again what I've said with the hyperdimensionality. We couple on levels we don't even understand.
Yeah.
When you talk to a person face to face, you're interacting with sound waves, light waves, heat waves, infrared.
Right.
But I think there's even a higher dimensional coupling that
I
you
do too.
engage with those people or person that you're interacting with. And so, is there some way that through that coupling mechanism that maybe if you have a talent for this, and because I mean, I've seen some YouTube things where some Russian peasant or something is able to do something with their mind. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, so I can't say that
Yeah.
for sure, but I can't say no. I can't say it's not possible because we're only scratching the surface in
Yes.
terms of learning the amazing potential that the human mind has. I
Right.
think more
Exactly.
often than not, what the problem with human beings, number one, is they decouple, they get selfish, they get self-centered, they disconnect from this loving, hyperdimensional,
Right.
quantum connected God dimension or dimensions. And then number two, they fake themselves out. And so then they think, oh, I can't ever do this. I can't.
Yeah.
And then they mess up the resonance. They mess up
Yes.
that
Okay. So
end.
I want to ask you then, like, do you believe that like when we understand like everything vibrates, right? Everything has
Yeah,
a frequency, right? That's
correct.
just the concept of energy, which for most everyday people, you're like, I don't know what that means. That's just like I don't understand it.
Right.
But how I will explain that to people is like, for instance, if you can feel the presence of somebody without seeing them, you're picking up on their energy, their
Yes, you
energetic
are.
field. I call it your auric field, but you can call it whatever you
Sure.
want. But
That's
you're
fine.
sensing
Yeah,
them outside of your five senses, right? You
correct.
can feel their energy and presence.
Yes.
Um, so I want to know, do you think emotions have different vibrations? Like if you're super sad, depressed,
Mhm.
feeling a lot of shame, guilt, fear, I call them so you'll get the cats out of the bag. I do. I'm curious if you do. I
Mhm.
think of those as very low vibrational or contracting energies
Mhm.
versus love, hope, kindness, consciousness,
Mhm.
like a source of unconditional joy and love for others is a very
Yeah.
expansive energy.
Yes.
Is there a science that backs up what I feel intuitively in terms of emotions and vibrations and how it all works?
Sure. Okay, so this is a good question, but it's loaded. So I got to give me a
Okay,
couple of
break it
minutes
down
to
for me.
answer. Okay, first of all, yes. Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of this universe, you have to understand them in terms of frequency, vibration, wavelength. He's absolutely correct. Everything in this universe has a frequency. It has a
Yeah.
wavelength. Even matter, even
Right, even like
atoms,
a
and
rock.
right, even a
Right.
rock has a de Broglie wavelength.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's number one. Number two, if you look at like icons, and again, I don't want to interject my religion, but I'm Orthodox Christian. If you
Yeah.
look at icons, one of the things you see is a glow, a halo around saints, around
Right.
Jesus, around
Yeah.
all these. And I believe that glow, I don't think that saints glowed per se, like, like they weren't like the fireflies in the 3+1 dimensional space time, but they did have an aura. Okay. They
Yeah.
did, like you called it, auric energy.
Yeah.
And if you ever go into a room and you smile and you just something about your face, people look at it. I've seen this.
Yeah.
And
They'll
you
say,
say
"Can you hear
hi.
us? Can you hear a smile over the phone?"
Well,
Right.
I think you can feel it. Maybe
Yeah, I
you
can.
can't
Yeah.
hear it, but you can feel it
Yeah.
on this hyperdimensional level. So, you go in and you see somebody on the street and you smile and say, "Hey, how you doing?" You know what? I find 9.5 times out of 10 they will speak back to you and they'll smile too.
Yeah.
And and I've seen with animals, I don't know why, but I'm allergic to animals, so to dogs and cats, but for some reason they'll just follow me. Maybe it's like the forbidden fruit or something like that, but they'll go up to me.
It's
They'll
a
like
vibe.
and they'll
It's a
hang out
vibe,
with me.
professor.
They'll
It's a
literally
vibe.
like, yeah, I'm at a dinner table and they just won't leave me. And I mean, not everyone, but I see this.
Well,
And
because they
so
can
I'm
sense
just
energy better than us,
there's
so they
something
say.
that they have a
Yeah.
better sense of energy.
Yeah.
So I think that this is very powerful. And I think that
They're feeling your love potion number 9. You know what I
it's
mean?
something like that. It's something like that. So, yes, I do believe in this very strongly. I think obviously more studies have to be
Yeah.
conducted. It's hard to do studies that are basically what we would call in the metaphysical range,
Right.
which
Right.
is outside of what I can do standard tests. I have some ideas, but I think that absolutely, if you think of the world around you, you've got vibrating everything, vibrating atoms,
Yeah.
electrons. You
Right.
have your heartbeat, your nerve impulses are all a collective symphony. And so we live in this symphony of nature. The
Yeah.
best times of happiness are where you're out in nature, when
Oh,
you're like
totally.
on the beach and you're listening to the waves,
That's
the
right.
seagulls, the chatter of people around you. That's energy. And then of course you're getting energy from the sun and you're getting the wind.
Yeah.
If you're in a
Trees.
forest, you're listening
Mm-hmm.
to insects, you're listening to the rustling of the leaves. We like that. That's something that was engineered into us, that we
Yes.
need to feel all of those waves at the same time. That makes us happy. What is happiness? If you look at it from a wave perspective, happiness is when the wave is free. If you think of a ripple in a pond, you drop a rock in a pond
Yeah.
and the waves just expand. That's kind of like our spirit. Our spirit likes to expand
Yes.
and couple with one another, connect and interact. And so I think that's when we're happy. When we're not happy, that's when you're tormented. That's when you have a
Yes.
collapse of your spiritual wave function.
That's right.
You're trapped. You're in some sort of a nested loop, like a computer program that you
Yes.
can't get out of it. And in fact, there are therapies to when somebody is, they do, of course, unfortunately, things like electroshock therapy, but they have other techniques, to try and distract the mind from that, get it out, break that loop.
That's right. Break that cycle.
To expand the mind. So I think that absolutely, I agree with you. There is an auric energy to all of us. I just think that unfortunately, many of us ignore that. We say that's not rational. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
And, by definition, this is what people have a hard time understanding. We are not rational creatures. We're actually irrational, because to be irrational means you have the ability to go outside of rationality is like our 3+1 physics-based universe,
or pragmatic or whatever you might want to call it. Yeah,
pragmatic, exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing is, to create something, you kind of have to be irrational.
Yes, you do.
You have an idea. Box. Yeah, you're outside of the box. Then you go into the box. Then you work and with the rational rules of physics. Yeah. But you have to be outside of the box. And so that's where we started. Yes, children are not rational, okay? They learn rationality, okay, because we have to live in this universe. We have to follow the rules of physics. But there's something inside of us that's wholly irrational.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. That's not and that, of course, is coupled with emotions, because emotions drive the desire. If you're totally rational like a robot, you have no desire.
Yeah.
You're living within some framework of rules in our universe, but we have something that transcends that. And that's a beautiful thing. We should never insult that. We should never knock that. We should always emphasize that, because that's the essence of creativity.
When I try to explain to people, so just for background for you, I was in the corporate world for many, many years, a chief sales officer, and my mediumship abilities dropped in after the age of 40. So I didn't live my life with these abilities always, right?
Sure.
So I am like one of those, Curious George killed the cat. Like, I am so curious about how does this work? How am I able to do this? Like I'm just a regular person. I don't understand how I'm able to do these things. And I can feel energy. I can human energy, but also non-human energy. And I'll meditate and I'll feel like, for instance, Archangel Michael. I actually think he's around you a lot, in case you're wondering.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so.
In fact, I saw him above your shoulders, for what it's worth. And so I can feel that energy. When I saw that over it would have been your left shoulder, I felt a wave of chills through my body. I can maybe see things that someone else's eyes can't see, or pick up on little fragments of energy, but I can feel it. So it's hard for me to explain, but the way I try to explain this to my husband, who's like very pragmatic. So this has been quite we love each other deeply and fiercely, but we have had many a late night conversation over coffee, let me tell you.
Sure.
But I say, I think what I'm able to do is tap into the energetic exchange that's happening between you and your creator, and you and a higher dimensionality, this interaction that this connection that you have, for whatever reason, I'm able to go into a deep meditative state in consciousness and tap into that energy and pick up on cues within it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you believe in mediums or not. I'm super curious how you could explain the way in which somebody can pick up on unseen energy and tap into it, especially feeling it.
Right. Well, again, you might be able to see something I can't see, and God bless you for that. We all have different talents. We all have different abilities. That's what makes us so special. Every single human is a unique creation. They're not the same. We are not the same
by
in
design.
any way, and God intended it that way.
Exactly.
And so the point is that, for me, I see so much wonder in this universe. I see a universe that is so complex, and yet there's in one way there's such a simple concept that We were put here to love,
Yeah, I
to love
agree.
the creation, to love each other. And
Hmm.
so I feel that that love is something that's that infinite energy, that's that
Yeah,
hyperdimensional from God.
I
And
agree.
I can't measure that per se. I mean,
Right,
except just the brief things I mentioned, when I interact with some animals and feeling that feeling in the room, that glow, that kind of that
right,
hyperdimensional
right,
aura
right.
that I think we all have that. I just think it's maybe in different strengths based on our own who we are.
Yeah, our own creation.
Yeah, I mean, some people just will refuse to believe that there's anything outside of this universe.
Right.
But even I'll have students when I'm teaching physics, Doc, as the universe expands, what is it expanding into? It's like a
Yeah,
balloon that
yeah,
expands. It's a two-dimensional surface on the balloon, but it's expanding in three
yes,
dimensions.
yeah,
So to me, it's very clear that there are certainly more dimensions. If I could imagine it, it's probably there. Are there
right.
parallel universes? Physicists have postulated, I'm not
Yes.
alone, that there are probably many universes. And,
I will double down on that.
yeah,
From somebody
cool.
who's been able to channel stuff, I will say doubling down on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, are there universes that are similar to ours that are offset in time? I can't say no because it's metaphysics. But the point is, physicists have postulated this. I
Yeah.
mean, again, it's like if there's four dimensions, you get into this, we call it inductive reasoning. If there's 3 + 1 dimensions, why not 4 + 1?
Yeah.
Why not 5? Then if there's 4 + 1, which is where string theory comes. So
Right.
wait a minute. If
Yeah.
there's 11 dimensions in string theory, why not 12? Why not
Yeah.
13? You get into this sort of illogical thing that if you can think of it, it's probably true. And so I just feel that, I mean, again, it's hard to articulate what is love. Love is an
Yeah.
interaction, just like charges interact. Like
Yeah.
charges
That's a good way
repel.
to think about it.
Yeah, opposite charges attract. And so gravity, all masses attract each other. So I like to look at love as this hyperdimensional
Yeah.
interaction
Yeah.
that connects all of us,
Yeah,
every
and I
single
find
one
it
of
to
us.
be a very expansive energy.
Yeah,
Like I
yeah,
truly believe you're either contracting or expanding. You're either
yeah.
leaning into your love or you're not. You're leaning
Correct.
into very hateful fear-based energy, and
Yes.
you can choose. And
Yeah.
I think I don't know what you think about this, but I think you're either expanding or contracting, but not
Yeah.
both at the same time. Now you can expand and contract real fast, like, oh, now I have a limiting belief, or a gossipy thought about somebody or whatever, and that's a very contracting energy, versus like,
Right.
oh my gosh, like I seek to
Right.
understand you. Where do you come from? I want to know more about you. Like
Empathy.
you're different than me, but
Yeah.
I find that fascinating, and that's a very
Right.
expansive energy.
Right.
Do you agree with that in the sense of energy?
I completely agree with you. I like to
Love it. Look at
analogize,
how
and
much
this
we're
is
thinking the same. I
yeah,
mean,
no, we're definitely thinking the same. Which is great. I mean, what I would say is as follows. This is a little more physics, but we have this concept of a black body. The sun is very similar to a black body. A black body is something that receives energy and freely transmits it. Okay, so spiritually, I believe we are initially black bodies. We receive love, we give love. The point is that it's like you said, the medium of exchange.
yeah,
Okay. Now,
yeah,
what happens is over time, people get selfish, they get greedy,
right,
they start thinking they're better than everybody
right,
else. And what happens is they lose the black body and they become reflective. So, have you
yeah,
ever seen a selfie? Okay.
mm-hmm.
When somebody's doing a selfie in a mirror in a bathroom, and you see that reflection of all the energy onto themselves.
Yeah,
That's not good because
right,
you get cold. You start losing the love, that warmth that we receive.
yeah,
Love is
yeah,
mutual. You
yeah,
cannot love something and not be loved back. I mean,
right,
maybe a material object, you might think you love it, but you don't. Material
yeah,
objects can be
right,
destroyed. They're inanimate. It's the real love is between animate objects, between your puppy, between your baby, your husband, your wife,
yes,
And so the point is that what happens is when we become selfish, we shut off that ability to receive love, real love,
right,
not fake love, not the love of a gold coin or a
right.
mink
I
coat,
totally
the
agree with
love
you.
between two people or multiple people.
Right,
And so I think that's the biggest problem is then we start losing energy. We start getting cold and
yeah,
angry and bitter.
right,
And so because we're shutting ourselves off from that medium of God, that medium
yeah,
of
I
love.
agree.
And so
And
I
I
think
think
that's
there's
the
been such
problem.
I think there's been such great examples of what it means to like walk a 3D plus one now I'll say because I've been around you 3D life and really channeling full love, right? Like
Yeah,
Mother Teresa, Gandhi, Buddha. I mean, there has been such
yeah,
examples of
yeah.
people that have
Tesla.
walked in a human, right? Sure.
Yeah, yeah,
um but I think in terms of understanding Jesus
yeah.
and I probably would say I'm still a Christian. It's what fits the box best for me. I grew up super religiously. It's part of my family's DNA.
Hmm.
I still go to church, and
Good for you.
it's when I think of Jesus in particular, and I've actually met him in a couple meditations, a couple times in my
God
life, which
bless you.
is just I
Yeah.
can't. I'll start crying thinking about it. To be honest,
Mhm.
um, I find that to be the most powerful representation of
Yeah.
unconditional love. Whether you
Yes.
believe in him or not, is
Yes.
there anything wrong with wanting to be more like that?
Absolutely. When you look at Jesus's life, and again, I don't want to be too much
Yeah,
into that.
fair.
Just for your readers, I don't know what they're or listeners, but the point is, Jesus, of all the people I can think of on this planet, he got nothing out of living on this earth. He
That's right.
gave everything. He gave
Yes.
so much. He gave his own life. He
Yeah.
showed us an example, a way of how to live. And it's love your neighbor, love your enemy.
Yeah.
He working with Mary Magdalene, who's a fallen
Yes.
woman, and still loving her, showing her, look,
Right.
I still love you.
Yeah.
And I think that is so powerful.
Right.
That it's look. And if you look at Gandhi, if you look at Tesla, they all had that very similar concept of
Yeah.
self-sacrifice
Yeah.
for a greater good. Tesla gave he died a pauper in a hotel room, Hotel New Yorker, but yet we still live with his inventions more
Yeah.
than 130, 40 years later. And so Gandhi showed the way of nonviolent resistance. So did
Yeah.
Dr. Martin Luther King. So did Henry
Totally.
David Thoreau. So there's a concept there that is that, look, I love all of you. I don't,
Yeah.
even my enemies. I feel
Right.
sorry for my enemies. And that the point is, we try. We're not going to succeed without
Yeah.
God, but we try our best to make our little micro universe a little bit happier, a little bit more blessed, a little feel
Yeah.
that love a little bit more. I think if we did that, regardless of what your faith is,
Right.
whatever, I think we would all be better off as a race,
Well,
as the
100% we would, and I truly think that that's what I've been called to do to raise the vibration of the planet in terms of helping people come back to a place of love for themselves and others. And
yeah,
I truly believe like if you can find love in your heart to forgive yourself,
yeah,
to come back to center, to reconnect with your true soul, your essence of who you are,
yeah,
that once you heal that, once you
yeah,
can heal those wounds, you now can overflow with love for
yes,
others. But
yes,
what we tend to do, especially as working moms, you're not a working mom, but we tend to like
I'm a
think if
working
I just
dad,
love,
but
there you go. But women in particular
yeah,
tend to think if you love others enough, then eventually you'll find love back for yourself.
yeah,
And I find that it works the other way. That
yeah,
and that when you love yourself first and it overflows into others, then you're like really vibrating at a high frequency and you're really like you're actually like sending those wavelengths out to others. Like you're
mhm,
transmitting that love energy
yeah,
out into other people, other spaces, because
yeah,
it's such an essence of who you are.
right,
And that's what I think we're all called to do. Whether you're a Christian or not, whether you're a scientist or not, whether you think this podcast episode was like, you know, shenanigans or you're totally into all of it, like if you could take anything, I hope
yeah,
that you and I at least are in sync in this idea that be in the energy of love, like
yeah,
that is actually how we shift the vibration of the planet.
yeah. I mean, and again, I'm a physicist, so I think see the world in a very physical way. But if you look at all the amazing biochemistry that goes on every femtosecond, every 10 to the minus 15 seconds in your body, even less, shorter, of all the miracles that we call life, that sum up
Yeah.
all those chemical reactions that give you the ability to imagine the
Right.
wonder of this world. I think that's the self love, because you would realize
Mm.
I may be
Yeah.
a human. I may be insignificant from the standpoint of this 4+1 space-time universe, or 3+1, sorry.
You're already in dream state. Look at
Now
you.
I'm getting carried away with hyperdimensionality. But the point is, if you were to understand that the fact that you can imagine this, the fact that you can feel life, that you
Yeah.
are living, that you can interact with all these beautiful waves, energy, I think there's the self-love is a greater love. It's a love of everything. It's a love of what this universe I call was made for as an eigen to support life.
Yeah.
Life is in what we call a
That's right.
natural state or an eigen state of this universe. And to realize that, oh my gosh, it's just so beautiful. It's like sitting on a seashore and just thinking
Yeah.
about all the miracles that have happened
Totally.
for 13.5 billion years to make you here
That's right.
be able to sit on the seashore and enjoy, a nice cold beverage of choice and be with your loved one, be with
Yeah.
your kids or your pets or something
Yeah.
is something so beautiful that it just like everything, all the sadness just kind of goes away. That's where you're talking about your meditation.
Yes.
It's just you're trying to connect not only with the deeper or the hidden energy, the hidden
Yeah.
love, the hidden dimension. You're connecting with your physical 3+1 dimensional universe. And I think that's just something so beautiful. That's the love. It's not necessarily self-love. It's realizing you're loved. You are part of something that is so loving
Yeah.
that wants you to enjoy. God didn't make the world for us to be miserable. Unfortunately, we blew it and we got a little disconnected from it, but we're still connected. And
I truly think it's there to teach us the polarity of it,
oh, absolutely.
And so it's
Life
like
is
right.
yeah,
So it's
life
like
is
if
a series
you
of teachable moments.
100%. So I mean, in order to know what light is, there has to be darkness. In order to know what love is, you
Yes.
have to know the opposite of love.
Yes.
And so I think it's just part of the human experience to have that
It is part of
duality.
the human experience, the human condition. We
Yeah.
are here to learn. We
Yeah.
are being trained to be like God, to be godlike.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. To learn
And I think
I
that's
say
so
like learn our
beautiful.
lessons. Yeah.
Yeah.
I call it Earth
Exactly.
School. That's what I say. I'm like, we're in Earth School, so buckle up, kids. It's time to
We're
learn.
in Earth too.
That's right. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Okay. How does this? We haven't really talked about this. We kind of have weaved in and out of this idea of consciousness. So maybe the last question I'll have is like, how does this all link with our consciousness, and
Yeah.
what does that mean to you, consciousness?
Excellent. So great final question there. So consciousness is the simultaneous awareness of past, present, and future. As far as we know, no other animal really has that. We have an awareness of that's something many, billions of years have transpired. We are living in the present, but we also have an awareness of the future, and we always seek to predict for the future. Now, what that means is that's outside of time. And I've argued that the realm of God, our creator, the painter, making the painting, we're in the painting. Outside of that painting, there's no time. Time stops. It doesn't mean anything for the creator. Time is just used, in my opinion, as a mechanism for creation in this universe.
That's
and
right.
So the essence of consciousness is that hyperdimensional awareness that we are in this bubble, this 3+1 dimensional bubble that we call our universe, but that there's something outside of the universe, this ability to think outside of the box, this hyperdimensional mathematics that exists, this string theory, physics theories of parallel universes and all that. This is where our consciousness intersects, if you will, with or expands with this hyperdimensional world. And so that's why it's so absolutely necessary, because this gives us a sense of purpose. Why are we here? What are we here for? The fact that we, just like you said earlier, we love to ask questions. That is the essence to me of life, is to be curious, to want to satisfy your curiosity. Isaac Newton, one of the greatest scientists that ever lived, made a comment once where he said, I feel like I was a child on the seashore. I found some pretty pebbles and I studied those pebbles, but then I realized the infinity of pebbles that I would never explore. You will explore it, because once you go back into that hyperdimensional connection with God, God's been around forever.
Yeah.
So all the questions will be answered through God. You connect into like a link, like a hyperdimensional, like when you connect your computer in the old days, with T1 cables or whatever. So you get into this massive link. Now all your questions get answered because you're in the zone. You're
Yeah.
with the creator. And so the essence of the consciousness is that awareness that,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh yeah, we're all part of something much greater than ourselves, but yet we are little pieces. Even though we're little pieces, we're like little holograms of that greater self.
Yeah.
So
So
we
what
have
if
something.
I don't know if you know who Sam Harris is.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. He has a app called Waking Up Meditator. He has a big podcast. He interviews a lot of politicians and different things,
Mhm.
but he's very very much lives in the presence. He talks about consciousness a lot, but he would say he's not a believer of God, but
Sure.
he believes like you can be in a state of consciousness of,
Yeah.
and I don't study him as much as other people I've talked to that do, but like it appears to me that he says it's an act of being in the present.
Hmm.
Do you
Okay.
what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, again, I
It's
don't
like
have to.
tapping into a higher awareness and being and
Yeah,
allowing
I mean,
yourself to live in the present.
right. But the thing is that, again, animals live in the present. They
Yeah,
might
you're
have a
right.
little bit of idea of something
Hmm.
happening in the future. They might be able to predict a little bit, whether or not some other predator is going to go for them. But we have something that is much, much greater because
Yeah,
we understand we have paleontology. We have
right.
evidence of what happened millions of years ago and even billions of years ago
Yeah,
through uranium
yeah,
isotopes, for example. So the fact that we have this conscious awareness of time, but we have this ability to go outside of time.
right.
One of the weird things is in mathematics, you have this concept of rational numbers and irrational numbers. Only somebody who could think outside of the box could come up with an irrational number,
Right.
which is the basis of that is the square root of -1. There's no such thing as the square root of -1 in our universe. And yet we use this as a beautiful mathematical technique to solve
Yeah,
problems in the real space, integral functions. And so the consciousness is just, again, an awareness of a place and presence of yourself. The concept of the id, the concept of,
yeah,
I think, of course, this has been misunderstood, but, God is dead or whatever from these Kant and, these other philosophers. The concept of the consciousness is, again, I'm defining it as a physicist as the awareness, simultaneous awareness of past, present, and future.
yeah. I like
Why
that
is future
definition.
important? Because it's not about living for the day. It's about preparing yourself, just like we
Hmm.
discussed with the idea of being trained. It's an awareness of that there is likely something much greater. I can't prove God,
Yeah,
okay? But I can't disprove, but nobody can disprove God either. You
exactly.
know, we have all sorts of weird things in physics, Bell's theorem, but if you actually look deeper into them, that this universe is a self-consistent system. No. There are many, many more things. We just don't. Just because we can't measure them doesn't mean they're not there.
Yeah.
And so that's all I'm saying is that it's this awareness of
While you say
something
that, for the
much greater than
record,
ourselves.
my hands are tingling like crazy. The energy I can feel in my hands. So
Well, thank you.
I always love that I get that physical sensation cues when people are like speaking the truth.
Thank
That's
you.
what happens. It's so
Thank
wild.
you.
Yeah,
That's
it's so
great.
great. Okay, I want to do one last thing with every podcast guest that I have. I do something called rapid fire. So I'm gonna
Okay.
it's just get to know you. I like to do it at the end. We probably should do it at the beginning, but I like to do it at the end.
Okay.
So I'm just going to ask you a few of your favorite things. Okay. This is just like human get to know you, get to know the professor. Got it?
Sure.
Okay. What is your favorite food?
My favorite food is probably the Mexican pollo. The pepper. What is it? It's poblano.
Poblano?
Poblano. Yeah.
The poblano pepper.
Yeah.
Never had
I
that
also like
answer.
maybe ceviche. That's a Serbian sausage. That might
Oh,
be
okay.
my favorite.
Nice. I
Yeah.
never had that answer either.
Yeah. That's probably my favorite.
Where is a place that you would like to travel, like a bucket list place that you have?
Okay, I would. I would like to. I've been up to Alaska, and I would like to go to maybe Tromso or somewhere way up there, so I could see the Northern
The
Lights. That's
Northern
something
Lights.
that's always intrigued me, and I would like
Yeah.
to go there.
Well, I'm from Minnesota, so every now and again, my parents send me pictures of them at a lesser degree than you can see the further north you go. But
Yeah.
what about your favorite holiday?
Well, my favorite holiday is probably Christmas.
Yeah, I knew you were going to
It's the
say that.
birth of Jesus. It's such a beautiful
Yeah, it
time.
is.
I
When
love
I
to.
was,
My kids are home. It's
yeah,
probably Christmas.
when I was little and when our daughter was little too, we would always make a birthday cake for Jesus and we would sing him
That's
happy
so
birthday.
cool. That is so cool. I love
My
that.
mom's cool like that. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
good.
What's your favorite? Okay. I'm not even going to ask you this, your favorite animal, because you're not an animal guy.
I think one of the most elegant animals is the horse.
Oh,
And
that's
even though
good.
I'm allergic to horses,
They're highly
I've ridden
intuitive
horses.
creatures.
They're just beautiful creatures.
They can
They're
sense your
very
energy
loving, and
very
they were a
intensely.
critical workhorse, literally
Yeah,
workhorse
that's
for
true.
humans. So I think the horses. I'm intrigued by the horse.
Yeah. Okay, what brings you, this is the very last question. What brings you profound joy?
Profound joy when I teach
Mm,
and I see the light bulbs go off on my students. You just know it. I've been teaching
hmm.
for like 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
And when you say something and you see right away, you feel that energy that they're excited.
Yeah.
And that's probably brings me the most profound joy.
Oh, then you know you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
great. Well, if people want to read more of your articles, I'll link them in. But if people want to follow you or
Hmm.
read some of your content, like how can people be more engaged in the work you're putting out in the world?
Sure. So I have a Medium channel. So
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
Michael G. Pravica, Pravica.com. I mean,
We'll
I
drop
do
that in the
write a
show
lot.
notes.
I write a lot of, I have probably 900 letters to the editor and op-eds published all over the world. So I'm big on that. I have a Twitter feed, Dr. Pravica, Dr. Pravica, and Pravica. So I had this, which is I presume how you got in contact with me through this Popular Mechanics article interview. I had hundreds of people write
I
me
bet so.
emails.
Yeah.
Let me just say thank you for all the emails. Thank you for the love. I can't, I've had like 100 people write me about their theories of life, the universe, and everything.
Oh, I'm sure. And you're like,
I
I
just,
don't, yeah.
yeah, unfortunately, I just don't have the time. I've been sent like 15 books on, and so I'm getting to it, but it just
Yeah.
takes time. I don't have all
Yeah.
that time. So, I mean, I'm pretty out there. I mean, as far as if they want to, connect,
Yeah,
it's
totally.
just like, please be aware, I don't have infinite time. I wish I
Right.
did,
That's right.
but I'll try my
He's in
best
the
to be
3D plus one world, folks. So he does
correct.
not have
Correct.
unlimited time in the quantum, like he's in the
Right.
quantum field. You need to just skip into the quantum field, answer all the stuff, and then skip back.
Yes,
It's
yes. I don't
magic.
have Saint Archangel Michael's abilities, but I try, and
Yeah.
so yeah, people have I've met some wonderful people, and I thank God for that
Yeah.
ability. And maybe that's the best thing for me. It's just that I've been able to kind of get people excited about
Yeah.
hyperdimensionality and
Yeah.
spirituality, and that's good.
Yeah. That's right.
Just please be aware I don't have all the answers. I'm not a saint. I'm not, but what I see is so beautiful. It just gives me so much wholeness, completeness
Yeah.
as a human being that I just want to keep going. I want to keep exploring it.
Well, I am so grateful that you chose to spend your morning talking to me and allowing our listeners to get a physicist's perspective on energy and consciousness and hyperdimensionality. And it was fascinating for me. So I am so grateful. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. No, it's my pleasure. And anytime, feel free to contact me. We can further discussion.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.